Before we get too deeply into the paint process, I want to take a look back at all the things I've accomplished with this car in the last year. It was almost exactly a year ago in January of 2024 that I drove all the way from Denver, Colorado to Milwaukee, Wisconsin to acquire this car from my good friend Joe. I trailered the car all the way back to Denver through multiple snowstorms in the Midwest. I also had some stupid claims. So I decided that my goal is to build this car for under $12,000.
Good luck.
Yeah, that didn't happen, but more on that later. It is a serious project. It needs paint, an engine, a transmission, and just about everything else. But I was up for the task. The car also had a lot of rust that required reparation, and the welding didn't stop there. I welded in all the holes and unsightliness of the engine bay, in addition to repairing a rear quarter panel that had sustained damage in an accident and was subsequently replaced. Whoa, that's a big hole.
That's what she said.
All this required lots of welding, grinding, and fabrication. Then the bumper fabrication had to be done and ended with a custom molded Cobra insert and custom lower air inlet with the slats on the sides removed. I put in torque box reinforcements, and the custom work continued. I custom built a center console with parking brake space sacrificed for 2 cup holders that are not in an annoying spot, and a very special, one-of-a-kind emergency eject button. But the custom work didn't stop there. I wanted to move the battery from the engine bay to the trunk for both better balance and weight distribution, as well as to clean up the engine bay. I also wanted a custom subwoofer box, so I combined the two ideas and made a box worth showing off. The box is equipped for multiple amplifiers on the back and has 3 isolated boxes, one for the battery, one for the sub, and one for storage. And has an easy shutoff switch for convenience. And then more custom work? In fact, I CAD designed and fabricated my first car part in this process, and I couldn't be more proud of myself. I even did videos on how I created these parts, showing everyone how you can do it too. What I designed and built was a rear brake bracket to hold 2014 Cadillac ATS brake calipers. The benefit of this is that there is an exact match between the front and rear brake calipers if you are intending to do the front Cadillac ATS Brembo brake calipers up front. This is a very popular swap, and so my intent was to make it even easier. I hope to sell this patent pending part to the public in the future. And it doesn't stop there. The list of custom work continues as I did a color change to the entire interior of the car. It used to be gray and now it's black, which I think will work perfectly with the color I chose for the car. And does color even matter if you don't have an engine? Well, I do now, and I chose a Blueprint 302 crate motor that should put out at least 360 horsepower, according to Blueprint. In fact, the engine came with a dyno stating it puts out over 380 horsepower. I can simply say I love that about Blueprint. About that color, it's finally time to prepare and paint the car. It's all come down to this. Over a year of working on this car to bring it back to life, to save it from almost sudden death in the crusher. It has been daunting and challenging, but rewarding. It has all been worth it. Well, it will all be worth it if the painting process goes as planned and comes out looking good. Otherwise, it could all be a significant waste of both time and money. If the painting process goes wrong or we're hit with any number of potential mishaps that can and or will happen when you paint a car in your garage. A car's really only as good as its paint. I don't care if you have a stellar performing car. If it looks like shit, I don't want it. Let's hope this painting process goes well. So far, you've been watching Joe and I prime this car. The black paint you saw earlier was an epoxy primer that is intended to be able to stick to anything. This is a must-do when painting. You must have a good base of epoxy primer. The gray paint you see is high build primer or urethane primer. This is intended to build up the layers on the car, which can help reduce or even eliminate small scratches, gouges, dents, or dings. It is this urethane primer that gets sanded down to a super smooth surface by a process called block sanding that helps to make the car straight. This primering and sanding process took months and hundreds of hours of daunting work. But now that the sanding is done, we can tape off the car for paint, wipe it down with some wax and grease remover, and then finally paint the car. This is Bimini Blue Metallic, a factory Ford paint color, code K3, made for only 1 year circa 1991. I absolutely love this color. It's one of my favorites. It appears to be bright blue in low light, but has color changing properties that make it look almost teal or turquoise in the sun. This color screams 1980s, as does the design of the Foxbody Mustang, so they go together perfectly. There's no time like now. Let's paint the car. We ended up making a paint booth on one side of my garage with painter's plastic. This helped to prevent dirt and debris from contaminating the paint, but it also helped to prevent getting paint dust everywhere else in the garage. Mind you, this was only partially effective. Debris still found its way into the paint, and paint dust still got everywhere. Such is life painting in your garage. As you can see, it gets pretty foggy, and at times pretty hard to accurately see what you're painting. We ultimately had to set up a vacuum, sucking air and moisture and paint dust out of the booth so we could continue to paint. This all had to be done over 3 or 4 days in spite of our limited space. We also had to get a little creative to fit everything in the booth each day to avoid having the paint process take even longer.
It's got the spoiler right there, hung on some airline cable, over panels. The lighting in here isn't real great right now, but you can kind of get an idea.
Painting a car is extremely stressful, especially when you have put in all the effort over an entire year to completely restore the car. A good paint job is all that's needed to make this a beautiful restoration. But one mistake could ruin everything. It turns out painting a car isn't that difficult if you have a good idea of what you're doing and stay diligent and adherent to the quote-unquote process. Trust the process, they say. In our case, we aberrated a bit from the process because you should sand in a graduated fashion when you're block sanding, starting at 120 or 220 grit where needed, and then going up the grit escalator to 320, 400, 500, and finally 600 grit before painting. We skipped a couple grits, and when we painted, we found scratch marks in the paint coloring, highlighting our mistakes. Luckily, we discovered this early on, went back to sanding, and followed the quote-unquote process to the T. And now the paint has its chance to look its best. After multiple base coats were applied, we had to apply at least 4 layers of clear coat. The clear coat process is much more difficult than the paint process. You have to go on much heavier or wet, they say, which is right on the precipice of causing paint runs. Yeah, I caused quite a few paint runs, but it still turned out clean.